Okay, I'm here with author and former Senate candidate Andy Martin. Andy, you're here at the summit. What did you think so far?
Well, I think it's a very impressive event, but unfortunately this presidential primary hoopla tends to weaken the local party.
How, in what way does that happen?
Well, basically the central party apparatus of the New Hampshire GOP becomes self-funding and doesn't have to go out and beat the bushes for money. And they essentially control money that they generate through the presidential. Now, it's not pay to play, but at the same time, a lot of candidates will spend tens and $20,000 advertising and becoming sponsors. So they raise money off the national wagon, and then they have that money to use as they see fit. And as a result, it doesn't put them under the pressure to go and expand the base, to go door to door to the grassroots. And that's why we're not generating local candidates for governor or senator, because we're not developing local talent. We're kind of nationalizing the party, and it's weakening our backbone.
Now that's a perspective on New Hampshire that you haven't heard, that I have not heard before. I mean, last year, of course, we had in New Hampshire a little disappointed in a year that was a big Republican wave. The Democrats were able to hold the governorship. They were able to beat Scott Brown in the Senate. Their only good news of that night. Are you worried about that type of thing happening again, from what you're saying?
I will guarantee that it's going to happen again. You see, look at the two candidates you just mentioned. They did not have a, quote, local candidate that the establishment wanted to support. So they went for a celebrity candidate because it would bring in money to the party. And it worked on that level. But they're not developing local candidates. Likewise, the governor candidate, of course, ran into the Ballot Law Commission, and there were questions about where he had owned and where he'd gotten a homeowner's exemption and where his driver's license was. So he wasn't a candidate that had continuous ties that were unblemished to the state. Once again, he wasn't a solid, locally generated candidate. And that's going to continue to happen because the party is not developing local talent. It's funding itself on national primary type events, and the local talent is atrophying.
Now, speaking of national events, since this is a national event, you might recall we were both here last year, and it was a lot less formal. What's now the press room was an interview room where there was plenty of room to sit down and talk to people. Now there's media everywhere. It's just it's a madhouse. Do you anticipate a lot more of this throughout the state, where the coverage of the GOP is just going to be through the roof?
Well, I don't want to put it this way flippantly, but we're the only game in town. As of right now, Hillary Clinton does not have an opponent. One of the things that American politics has generated is a massive industry, the sort of the politico-industrial complex. There are people that write, that cover, that produce, that generate creative work, and so there's always a self-actuating demand for things to happen. Now, when half of the political process is dead and lying fallow, all of this energy tends to transfer itself to the other side. In this case, we have a very, very active Republican primary and some great candidates. But ultimately, we're going to win the presidency in 2016, not because of the content of our character, so to speak, but because of the lack of quality of Barack Obama's administration and the backlash that he is going to leave behind.
Now, you've written extensively on the president. You were telling me you were doing some more research into his past in Hawaii, which would make my wife very jealous of you. Hillary Clinton, of course, a person who's been around for a very long time. It seems to me, it's almost as I'm watching her candidacy roll out, I get the impression that even the media understands that she's a terrible candidate. I almost think that they're hitting her so hard because they want someone else to support, because they're afraid of the election.
The Democrats are in a quandary. On the one hand, they've built her up into a Mount Everest of a candidate. On the other hand, she's just a bad person. This email thing, they try to pretend that it's complicated and people don't understand it. People understand very well. When you work for the government, you use government facilities. She was using her own private email system to hide the work that she was doing and to conceal what she was doing from the government. I mean, this was an illegal act, and it's going to haunt her. So Democrats are not stupid. You know, they're our friends, they're our neighbors. We fight, but at the end of the day, we're all Americans, and we're all in this boat together. And they're aware that they're in a boat that's not sailing very well and may be sinking, and she lacks any kind of personality to be a candidate. If her name was Hillary Rodham rather than Hillary Rodham Clinton, her candidacy for the presidency of the United States would be a joke.
Now, is there a single candidate that you have picked out as your man yet, or are you going to wait for a while?
I have picked out a candidate that I'm working against and that I will not support, and that's Jeb Bush. Among the other Republican candidates, I'd be happy with any of them, because I think even a weak Republican is going to get enough of a backlash vote to win the presidency in 2016. It's going to be a snap-back election, and much like 1968, where the public was so disgusted with what was happening in the anti-war protests and the chaos on campus, that they snapped back and voted for, quote, the new Nixon, who was just the same old Nixon.
Now, where can people find your stuff online if they want to read more of your investigative work?
ContrarianCommentary.com or ContrarianCommentary.wordpress.com, or they can send me an email, andymart, ANDYMART20 @AOL.com, and we add them to our mailing list, and we've got some really exciting stories that we just generated out of Honolulu involving more shenanigans by Obama, and quite an interesting confrontation with Obama's drug dealer in Honolulu.
And that's from years ago, obviously.
No, now.
All right, if that doesn't get you to go to that site and read that story when it's up, nothing will. Andy Martin, thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome.